can get on and off of some of the islands. The death toll for Ian, and I'm using that as a reference point here, was 150 people, give or take, 70 in this county. So once you start talking about storm surge getting up there 6, 7, 8, 10, 12 feet, loss of life is obviously your biggest concern. I believe, and it certainly seems for all appearances, that enough people evacuated that you had a lot of people get out that could have potentially drowned. But we heard that the shelters, and you can again feel this wind really kicking up, the shelters had about 100,000 people across the state, according to DeSantis and the Department of Emergency Management when they briefed a little while ago. Earlier it was like 30,000. Now they're reporting 100,000. It's true in Lee County where I am as well. Start of the day at 1,600, 7,000 people in shelters here.
Very telling there. Sam Brock, stay safe, and we'll be checking back with you in just a little bit. Let's go back to Tom Yamas in Sarasota. Tom, I can't even describe what you and your team just went through. I mean, we were watching your shot. Everything was so calm, eerily calm. And then all of a sudden, I thought this was like playback or something. I could not believe that this was happening live because it happened so quickly. What was it like on your side of the woods?
Hold on, Gotti. Power's just going out over here on the island of just off Sarasota. I'm looking out over here. You can see all these hotels and condos have just lost their power. It may fire back up again once their generators kick on, but this just happened. You see it right there.
Wow.
Listen, Gotti, this is the craziest part of this hurricane right now. Like I said, after that eye pass, Bill Cairns told me he said, get ready for it. And you're right. It was incredibly calm. And then I'd say within minutes, it got incredibly dangerous. We were reporting, I think we have the clip there, and I was just basically saying how the situation was growing dire. We were watching that storm surge come in, and then a transformer, I think, exploded over our head, and that's when I realized it was getting too dangerous. We brought the entire team back. We're completely fine. We're surrounded by concrete here. We're high up. I do want to show you the storm surge. Here's the clip right now. Sarasota is starting to turn dire. At first, we had, okay, we're going to go. We got to go.
Wow, that is a live
look
right
now. We didn't want to
now.
take any chances there.
Okay, we just want to move inside.
Yeah, we didn't want to take any chances at that point, Gotti. It obviously turned very fast. And I got to tell you, there were a lot of cars, there were a lot of people that were out, trying to see what the hurricane felt like and looked like because we were in the eye. And again, it was within minutes, it completely changed. This storm surge is coming in so fast. I don't think I've ever seen anything quite like this. I've covered a lot of hurricanes. This has definitely been the strongest one I've covered this season so far. But look at that. I don't know if you can tell because it's so dark, but that's a garage, Gotti, and the first floor of the garage is almost completely inundated. What you're seeing there is the wall of the first floor, and that water is rising. This has come up, I'd say, in the last hour, and it's not stopping. The wind is ripping through here right now. I'm sure our weather unit knows how fast it's coming. I'm glad we're inside now, protected by this concrete high up. But you can see how it's ripping these oak trees and how it's ripping the palm trees. We're starting to see projectiles, nothing too serious, but branches, any kind of debris, garbage that was left over, it's all flying around. The power is out in Sarasota, and this is the brunt of Hurricane Milton. This is what Hurricane Milton was all about. That eye, it is so deceiving because it makes people think, oh, it's over, it's not that bad, there was too much hype. And then the backside of that hurricane hits you, and this is what it is right now. We experienced it up close, and I got to tell you again, Gotti, it was just within minutes that thing's nailed us. There's things that are starting to fly off. There are things that are starting to fly off the roof of some of these hotels and these condos. I think they're air conditioning. They're kind of like the air conditioning fans at the top of some units, and we're seeing those fly around as well. It speaks to the gravity of the situation here in Sarasota. I really hope those people that were out in their pickup trucks doing donuts during the eye are back in a safe spot because this is getting wild. The flooding has begun. The storm surge is here, and it's getting absolutely wild. I think we're going to go to Tampa right now. I'm not sure who we have there live. This is a fluid situation. We have Stephanie Gosk, who's live in Tampa. Stephanie, we just got whipped with the back end of the hurricane. I got to tell you, it's the real deal. What are you guys feeling there in Tampa?
Yeah, I mean, honestly, we're getting the brunt of it here as well, Tom. Ferocious winds in the last hour. And just to give you an idea, I was standing up on a box for a moment and a gust came through and basically almost knocked me off of where I was standing. And I'm in an area that's protected. So the winds, 70, 80, 90, even 100-mile-an-hour gusts that we're getting right now in Tampa. And, you know, you've been talking a lot this week about Hurricane Helene and the effect that it had on this area. That was a water event. What we are getting now with Hurricane Milton is both water and it is wind. And when we talk about the water, we're not going to get the surge here in Tampa Bay that they were so worried about, the catastrophic surge. But what you are getting is an unbelievable amount of rain, Tom. There's a period right now, and it's going to stretch for the next 2 or 3 hours, where we are getting upwards of 2 to 3 inches of rain an hour. And that on top of everything that we've been getting all day long, and it really has been raining steadily and at times very hard here. So that's upwards of a foot of rain. On top of this wind, it is really unclear what people are going to wake up to in Tampa in terms of damage, Tom.
And I know you said it's a wind event right now in Tampa, and the storm surge may not be an issue. Are you seeing any type of flooding at all right now? Are you feeling any type of storm surge? Or are you guys further inland and you can't really see it at this point?
We are not on the bay specifically. We are about a mile away, but there are a couple of bodies of water around us. There was what was a small, what I would call pond earlier that looks more like a lake, and there was also a canal that is now much, much higher. So those water levels are certainly rising. The streets have water covering them, although I wouldn't say it was flooding. It's probably likely because the water is just landing so quickly and not draining yet. But you have to imagine that at some point it just becomes oversaturated. We are getting flash flood warnings, or those repeated loud sirens on our phones saying that it is a life-threatening flash flood situation here in Tampa, where our equipment is actually getting blown over now by some of these gusts of wind, even though we're standing in a place that has walls on 2 or 3 sides right now, Tom.
All right, Stephanie Goss, you and your team, please stay safe. The situation is getting pretty dangerous here in Sarasota. There's debris. Look, George, shoot this over here. You see debris. This is basically some type of vinyl siding that's been ripped off. Looked like it was a portico by these tennis courts here, and now it's just getting tossed around in the wind. Jesse Kirsch is just below us as transformers are exploding around us. Jesse, you're literally one level below us in the same protected structure. This just got really wild. This is way more intense than what we experienced during Helene.
Hey, Tom. Yep, Tom, I'm going to have David pan over here because that piece of siding, we're going to watch it for our own safety as well. It is skidding across the top there. And if that blows our way, Tom, that's a real problem. So just bear with us. I know you guys are going to be watching this too. It's flying. Oh, my God, that piece of, did you see that, Tom? That is unbelievable. That is a huge piece of metal siding flying in the air right now. And we're going to, okay, look at it. It's pinned to the side of that garage. And I can tell you, Tom, before the lights went out down there, that the first floor of that parking garage is filled with water. There was a trash can floating in there. And I've been watching the water level on this ramp below us keeps on rising. This is why we are elevated. This is what storm surge can do. And we're just seeing it going up slowly over here. If someone is out on the Barrier Island area as this crashed in, there is no time in some cases to be racing to a higher level. And it may go so high that you don't even have a chance. And this is why officials have been pleading for evacuations. Tom, I have to tell you, we're less than 2 weeks since Helene made landfall. And we now know from the county, they have close to, at last check, close to 10,000 people in county shelters here in Sarasota. The county says that is the highest volume of people they have ever had come to a shelter in the history of their evacuations. That echoes what we've been hearing on the ground here from people. Helene changed their perspective on these storms. It was the hardest hit, the mayor told me, compared to others that they've had in this community. And hopefully that inspired more people to get out early enough, because we are now seeing how powerful these winds are gusting. All this rain whipping around, you would not have a chance to be driving through this safely. We know the police are off the roads. And with all that debris out there, this is not a time to be outside, Tom.
Yeah, no, Justin, I'm thinking about those cars we saw driving the wrong way towards the Barrier Islands during the eye of the storm. I hope those cars were able to turn back around and get out. My photographer, George Pujols here is going to move in a little bit so we can keep an eye on some of the debris flying. But I also want to show our viewers the storm surge that you and I are experiencing right now. George, if you can even come a little lower here. We're above sea level at the compound where we're staying here, this hotel and parking garage. And if you pan a little left, you can see that's where the driveway is. Most of the driveway right now is underwater as the water is rising. Jesse, what's that? Say that again.
Well, no, my hat's gone, Tom. I mean, a moment of levity, but at this point, you know, the winds are so powerful, I didn't even have a chance to catch up with that thing to hold it down. So that is what we're dealing with right now. The winds are really thrusting, and obviously we're in the garage for our safety, right? We've got these walls that can keep us grounded and protected in a way that we wouldn't normally think about because of the concern about all that debris that's out there, Tom. And all of that potentially, I think, might be funneling the wind through here in a way to make it, flying past us more quickly. But we're looking in all directions. We've got our team's eyes in every direction up here because we do not know what is out there. And we heard, the sound of that debris skidding across that blacktop over there really was chilling, Tom.
You know, Jesse, it's interesting. I'm looking at these palm trees that are just behind us, right? They would be to your left if you're looking at the camera. They're getting absolutely shredded right now. And these palm trees are so interesting. You know, They survive these storms because they're perfectly round and their roots get stronger as they bend. But the tops of them, those palm fronds, are completely getting shredded. And it takes a lot of hurricane wind. I'm going to ask George to back up a little bit because we're getting some debris that's kind of flying a little too close for comfort here. Most of it's leaves and stuff like that, but I'm just looking out for people, as you are, Jesse, too. The thing that I can't get over, though, is the storm surge. It is moving fast. It's almost taken over the first floor completely, the first story of that parking garage. And we're just getting started here, right? We've had another 1, 2, 3 hours of this type of intensity.
Yeah, and again, Tom, going back to the palm trees for a moment, those are not light, feathery leaves. Those are pretty sturdy and essentially like giant pieces of plywood. And in fact, in Hurricane Helene, when that was making landfall, a tiny piece of debris from one appeared to have hit me, and that actually sent our team back inside to safety. And I can tell you, it's not like getting hit with a leaf off of a typical tree. So the fact that those things are being snapped off and just shredded like you were describing just speaks to the ferocity of this wind. That is not an easy lift.
Jesse, I'm showing the viewers now where we are so they understand that we can stay safe while we report on this massive hurricane that is hitting Sarasota right now. These are concrete walls. We are surrounded by concrete. We're high up. We have cars that are protecting us from the wind shear. I do want to show you another angle of the storm surge here. I'm going to ask our photographer, George, to come down. And George, just point that camera down if you can. You can see the stop sign down there. Hopefully, that stop sign is already halfway covered in water. You can see it right there. And you can actually see the waves. That current is the storm surge that's coming in right now off the bay. And it's coming inland to Sarasota. The interesting thing that we were seeing when we were down there before we had to pull out because it was too dangerous was that the storm surge felt like it was coming from every angle. You were seeing water come in from different avenues, from different streets in different directions, which essentially gives you the sign. It tells you that you're being surrounded by water. It's another reason why we had to come up here. But I got to tell you, the water is rising, I'd say inches in seconds, which is why it's so dangerous. When they talk about that wall of water, it is the truth. We're seeing it in real time here in Sarasota, Jesse.
Yeah, absolutely, Tom. And, we only have eyes on 3 sides of this because of the safety element you were just talking about, right? Over here, we know there's water. We know there's water off on this side street to the right. And then on the main road behind us, on the other side of our cameras for our viewers, we know there's water over there too. But I'm wondering about the main drag heading over by the marina, because I can tell you before landfall, in the last couple of days, we saw a boat that was partially submerged in the marina area from the aftermath of Helene. And again, this storm was expected to bring twice as much storm surge, and we are looking at really powerful winds. And so I'm really curious to know what that looks like. And obviously, when it is safe enough, when it is light enough, we will get an idea of the damage over there. But there are a lot of boats out in the water, Tom, not to mention the vehicles that we have been seeing on the roads and the people who we've heard shouting during that moment of calm during the eye.
You know, I lived through Hurricane Andrew. I was about 12, 13 years old when Andrew hit Miami back in 1992. And it changed the building codes all over Florida, right? People realized the power of a hurricane, especially a direct hit. What happens if windows break and wind gets in, it can lift off roofs. So our viewers seen all these giant skyscrapers, all these big buildings in Sarasota. They may be wondering how these things survive. They usually have storm impact windows, right? Those windows are very, very strong. They usually can withstand winds up to 165 miles per hour. What they can't withstand sometimes are projectiles. I mean, they are high impact, but you got to be really, really careful. Luckily, we don't see anything flying in the air that high right now. What I am noticing in those buildings, though, the power is out. There is no power. What's up is generator power, and it's just emergency lights at this point. We're up and we're running with lights, but we're on battery right now, and that's the way we're able to broadcast you live. I understand we have a storm chaser in Daytona who's been following the storm for us as well. Daytona's far from us. It's on the east coast of Florida, but the storm is so big that everyone in Florida is experiencing something. What are you seeing there in Daytona? All right, we lost our storm chaser. It's okay. It's going to happen in a live situation. I'm going to stick with Jesse right now because the story seems to be right here in Sarasota. Jesse, you were here a couple of days longer than I was covering what was going on here. You saw some of those debris piles, you told me, further inland. It felt like people got out of Sarasota. We were seeing businesses boarded up. Is that the sense you got? And were they able to tackle those debris piles? Or was it sort of too much and not enough time like there was in Tampa?
Yeah, I think, Tom, that it was too much. We know from the governor that he said they were working 24/7, but he also says they only got 50% off the barrier islands. Wow, that's a really strong gust. I can hear it through your mic, and we just got the wind shifted directions and got a rush of water to the face. There's definitely still a lot of debris out there. The mayor had told me yesterday that well before landfall, they had stopped collecting debris, and there were still piles as I was walking with her in a ghost town, effectively, street out on the barrier island. I also can tell you, Tom, I know you are no stranger to covering these either. Oh, man, that's really rushing through. When we come to town, right, we stock up like everyone else. Food, gas, non-perishable food, gas, water, gas cans, so we can have extra fuel on hand. And I got to tell you, Tom, it felt like those things were harder to find earlier this time around. And that echoes what I heard from the mayor, what we get the sense from in these communities is that people are on edge in a way they aren't typically because of what Helene did in this community already. Again, I saw a waist-high watermark in a home, not too far from where I am right now, on a barrier island just up the road. And that was from the last storm. This one is supposed to be more ferocious, and you got to hope that more people are taking it seriously. And from what we're hearing from officials, that seems to be the case, Tom.
All right, Jesse Kirsch. Jesse, you and your team stay safe. I know you're close by. I want to go to Chase Kane right now. He's our national climate reporter. A tornado, I'm being told, has just touched down in Daytona. That's where Chase is right now. Chase, what do you know?
Gotti, cannot confirm that this is a tornado, but I've been taking a look at the live radar, and there is definitely rotation in this storm. That's why we are well inside the loading dock of our hotel here. We have a safe place so we can take cover, but you can probably see here behind me just how strong these winds are. So we have that combination of both the sustained tropical storm force winds with the rotation in these storms that we've been talking about all afternoon. The National Weather Service office in Miami set a record for the most tornado warnings issued in one day today. As of last check earlier, we had well over a dozen confirmed tornadoes. I mean, you can see what the trees are doing here. Even the gate next to this loading dock here. The vehicle that just drove by is a Volusia County Sheriff. The only vehicles that we've seen lately are official vehicles because there is a mandatory curfew. There's a mandatory evacuation order in place for this area where we are in Daytona Beach. I mean, would be tough to guess how strong these winds are, but it's been pretty ferocious here over the last certainly over the last half hour or so, Gotti.
All right, Chase, it's Tom Yamas you're talking to here, but I know you're new with us, so that's all good. Please stay safe where you are in Daytona. We're going to check back with you a little later. George, I'm going to bring our photographer, photojournalist George Pujols back over here because I want to show how much the storm surge is growing here. I'd say it's climbing inches. Every minute or so, it gets more. And this is what they were afraid of here, right? It was a historic storm surge. A storm surge like they had never seen before. It's just getting started. We still have, I'd say, 1 or 2 hours of this intense weather. Our meteorologists will be able to give us a better sense of that. It's also such a big storm that there are different parts of the state being affected, including Orlando. I know we have Charles Salazar, who's live for us to help us out in our live coverage there. Charles, talk to us about what you're seeing in Orlando and what your big concerns are tonight.
All righty. First of all, thank you for having me here tonight, and thank you for the work that you guys do out there reporting the news, because that's really important to everybody. So in Orlando, we've witnessed quite a bit of rain, some rain bands that came through here. We're really concerned about flooding, and so now the winds are starting to pick up. I think right now they're sustained at 30. our rescue crews are going to be out there. They're going to be ready. But when the winds get to sustain 40 to 45, which we're expecting, then we have to pause operations and wait for that to stop before we can continue those operations. But, we're concerned with falling trees. What we learned through Hurricane Ian, we learned that this could be a potential heavily flooded city. And so what we did this time is we pre-positioned our rescue boat assets throughout the city in those areas that flooded previously. So we're going to be ready for that. We are aware that there has been many tornadoes, and we're prepared for that. We've had tornado warnings here, nothing confirmed. But the men and women of the Orlando Fire Department, they're ready. They've been preparing for several days. They performed really well during Hurricane Ian, and we're ready to perform for this storm as well.
Charles Salazar from Orlando. Charles, we appreciate all that you're doing over there. Please stay safe tonight. Our continuing coverage live from Sarasota will continue right now. We are live in Sarasota as Hurricane Milton is striking this area. Stay with us. Okay, guys, what's the plan? Okay. Right. Okay, we're live right now from Sarasota, our continuing coverage of Hurricane Milton. You are watching as this storm has already made landfall. This is the backside of the hurricane, the most powerful part of the hurricane, slamming into Sarasota right now. It made landfall just a bit north of us in Cedar Key, south of Tampa. That was somewhat of good news for Tampa because they were worried about the storm surge if it hit north of there. But right now, unfortunately, it's bad news for Sarasota, feeling the brunt of Hurricane Milton. And we're seeing that storm surge happen as we come to you live right now. The wind just ripping completely the palm trees, power outages everywhere. We are experiencing transformers explode, and we're seeing trees be ripped apart in real time right now. We still have a team of reporters that are fanned out across the state of Florida as the wind is really picking up here. I'm going to have George back up a little bit so he can get into a safer position as we set up here. If you're just joining our coverage, we are in a safe spot here. We're in a concrete garage on the 5th floor. There's no chance that the storm surge is going to get us. We are protected from the wind, but it is an intense scene right here, and one that we saw firsthand. We were in the middle of the eye, maybe about 45 minutes ago, and the eye was just passing us, and within minutes, the situation got incredibly precarious. A transformer exploded over our heads. We had to run out with our crew because at that point we realized we should be back inside. But that's how quickly the storm can turn on you. It can go from very calm when you're in the eye to the backside of the hurricane, which is happening right now. Again, as I mentioned, we have a team of reporters live tonight in Sarasota, in Tampa, in Fort Myers, all over the state of Florida, covering Hurricane Milton as it's made landfall and it's now cutting across what we call the I-4 corridor. I'm going to ask our controlman to tell me one more time who we have next, who's coming up here. Okay, we have Angie, one of our meteorologists, who's going to walk us through what's happening. Angie, talk to us about what's happening right now where we are in Sarasota.
Yeah, so Tom, you mentioned you went through the eye wall and you really saw the worst of it ramping up at a quick pace as expected. And on the backside of that eye wall, you see things wrapping around, and you can tell by some of the returns on here just how aggressive this rain, the wind is where you are right now. And that's only going to get worse here for the next maybe 30 to 45 minutes or so. And then we'll start to see things kind of tapering off a bit. Of course, you're not out of the woods. You're still going to deal with what's left to come for Milton here as it works more inland. But we've got some other things unfolding. Where Tom is right now, that's where we're really concerned about, of course, the wind and the rain, but the storm surge essentially from that point south, it is a tale of kind of two impacts. The storm surge for folks on that coastal region, and then we've got the really heavy rain, flash flood emergency ongoing across Tampa, and we've got, of course, the potential for those damaging, destructive winds with that eye wall working through these regions. So here's some of the rain that we're seeing right now. Notice the purple, the pinks, the reds. spreads, that is the extremely torrential rain falling in that region. We've seen multiple inches in just a span of an hour. In some spots last hour, it was over 5 inches over that region. So no surprise that we've got this flash flood emergency ongoing. But look how expansive those flash flood warnings are across this region. This is the area on the north side of that system that we're really concerned about the heavy rainfall. And it stretches across the state because it is going to remain north side loaded with the heaviest of the rain and the strongest of the winds. So as it works across the state, we'll watch that. This is going to go until 2:30 in the morning. I am concerned for what it must be like in this area right now, to be perfectly honest, when it comes to the flash flooding that they're likely seeing from Bradenton to Ruskin, Tampa, Clearwater, St. Petersburg. But they are not getting the storm surge. That, of course, is points south of there. And you can see that backside circulation starting to work in. So we've already had reports 4 feet, 5 feet in places like Fort Myers, Naples. So that means we don't really have a whole lot of gauges in between there. We're going to have to wait and see with first light what kind of unfolds when it comes to the storm surge for that region from Sarasota down to Fort Myers. But we likely will see that storm surge forecast from the National Hurricane Center verify if we're already at the point that we're at of 4, 5, 6 feet in some of these places that are farther away from where the center of that circulation is, and those onshore winds are continuing. So we're likely talking about much higher amounts closer to that system, of course. So we'll have to wait and see exactly how that plays out. No surprise, we've got a reverse storm surge happening in Tampa Bay. They've, of course, escaped the worst of it when it comes to the storm surge, but you saw the rainfall amounts, and you're about to see some of those wind reports that we've seen that have just been downright impressive as that system moves ashore. So that is what they're going to be dealing with when it comes to destruction and damage here through at least the next couple of hours. There's where we're, again, expecting the worst of that storm surge. 9 to 13 feet likely will verify. We'll see possibly the 8 to 12 feet verify as well, especially when you're talking about the Cape Coral area, the mouth of that bay. We saw it with Ian. We saw the destruction when it came to the storm surge, and it's not hard for flooding to occur in that area. And this likely is going to be several miles inland for that region as we get closer to high tide time. Here's the winds that I was talking about, over 90 miles per hour in a lot of spots. Bradenton, St. Petersburg, North Palm Beach, Venice, Sarasota, all over 90 miles per hour. This is what we mean when we're talking about getting in that northerly part of that eye wall. And it's ongoing. The system well inland, 84 mile per hour winds for Tampa and St. Petersburg this hour. We've got Winter Haven up to 71 miles per hour. So the power outages are just going to keep falling here as this system works across the state. We've already got more than 1 million in the central Florida and parts of the Space Coast. Will start to add to that. And this likely will be a good chunk of the state dealing with power outages with how expansive these tropical storm force winds are, but especially these hurricane force winds that extend well out from the center of that system. Now, the flash flood risk, notice as we get through the day today and get into tomorrow morning, we're really going to be concerned about places like Orlando and stretching up to Daytona Beach. I said that northern side of the system, that is where a lot of rain is. We saw shear and a cold front interacting with the system before it moved onshore. That kind of made the northern side of the system really big and bulky, and the southern side of it a little wimpy. Of course, it didn't weaken it all that much, but this means that the heaviest of the rain is going to be working across these regions, specifically Orlando, Daytona Beach here as we get through, especially into tomorrow morning. We're still going to be watching this. One thing to note, we've got already saturated grounds. We've already had 8 inches of rain in Tampa here over the last 24 hours, and impressive amounts in a very short period of time. So when you're getting multiple 4 inches of rain per hour for 3 hours on end, we're talking double-digit rainfall amounts. So you may have escaped in parts of Tampa Bay the storm surge, but you're still going to see the flooding likely into homes, businesses when it comes to the rainfall that's ongoing. And this, again, this is going to Orlando, Daytona Beach, those numbers are going to grow here as the system works across the state. One thing, that high risk of flash flooding, it's going to stay with us through the day today into tomorrow. We could potentially see over a foot of rain in some spots, maybe even higher than that. 1.5 feet wouldn't be out of the question, Tom. So this is a multi-impact event. And on top of that, we still have the threat of tornadoes. Those will last here a little while longer. But of course, this is a multi-impact event that's going to continue to unfold here as the system works across the state and maintains hurricane strength.
Yeah, Angie, before you go, one more thing. Do you know how long we're going to be feeling the hurricane force winds where we are here in Sarasota? Because we're really getting nailed right now.
Yeah, you've got a little while longer, probably another couple of hours, especially this system moving about 15 miles per hour. So you're going to be in it here for another couple of hours before you start to see the strongest of those winds kind of winding down. You're still going to have to go through some of that heavy rain. And of course, you know, the winds aren't going to completely relax, but the worst of it, you are in for a little while longer, Tom, unfortunately.
All right, Angie, we thank you for that. We unfortunately got a bit of breaking news, and it's the worst type of news you want to report here. I'm being told by our control room that there was a tornado touchdown in Fort Pierce, Florida, and there are fatalities. As we get more information on this, we were going to bring it to you, but I'm being told now that there has been a tornado touchdown in Fort Pierce, and because of that, there have been fatalities. It speaks to the danger of this storm and what is happening. Not only the hurricane, but the tornadoes that it is spawning tonight. Joining us now live is the mayor of Zephyr Hills, which is just north of Tampa. Mayor, I know tonight is a dangerous night. I know the storm is striking south of where you are. Are you feeling the effects of Hurricane Milton right now? And what is your message to your viewers and to your residents, if maybe they're watching tonight here on NBC News Now?
Yeah, we are feeling the power of it right now. The winds keep gusting up. You know, we're pretty blessed that we're not getting a direct hit, but we know that others are, and it's very sad. We've had rain for about 5 hours straight. At 8:30, we already had 6.5 inches of rain. We've got flooding throughout our entire city. I guess at this point, majority of our residents are without power, and the ones that are lucky enough to have some probably won't in the next little bit.
Mayor, were you in touch with, I don't know if it's Duke Energy or FPL or which power company powers your community, but were you in touch with them, and did they tell you at what point they'll be able to get crews back out on the road? I know it's obviously not anytime soon, but will it be in the days or weeks ahead?
Yeah, so our city is actually has almost all of the different organizations that power our city, and they usually hit the ground running after it's the storm safely gone through. With our last hurricane, it was within a day or two that they started hitting. You know, we can be without power probably 4 or 5 days. That happens here. But we're going to hope for the best, but we know that it's throughout the whole state. So I know that they're going to be doing the best they can to get all of us back online as soon as they can.
All right, Mayor, we appreciate your time. Please stay safe tonight, and I hope the residents of Zephyr Hills are able to ride this out. Jesse Kirsch is joining our live coverage once again. Jesse, I'm out here on the balcony just above where you are, and I'm looking out at the incredible scene we're watching unfold in front of our eyes right now. Vinyl siding being ripped off from different structures out here in Sarasota, a storm surge that doesn't seem to stop. We're seeing palm trees getting completely shredded. I no longer can see the bay because of the sheets of rain that are out here, Jesse. And I just heard from Angie Lassman, one of our meteorologists, it's going to be like this for the next couple of hours.
The idea of that, Tom, is kind of remarkable. We just saw another flash. I don't know if that was a transformer or lightning, but you know, the idea that these conditions are going to persist, and with all this debris flying, Tom, and I think for me the biggest thing that keeps catching my attention is the sound of that scraping of that metal off in the distance, Tom. And I know we've both been paying attention to it for our team's safety. Just speaks to the force of these winds. And yet you can see the pieces of the top of that little shed on top of this deck. Oh man, look at that one. It just got picked up. Tom, I just lost sight of one of those pieces of debris. I don't know if you saw that too, but it just kicked up off the deck and went off into the distance towards the bay, Tom.
You know, one of the things that's interesting is that our viewers are watching this. They're seeing these trees get shredded. What they may not be able to see, because this is a nighttime hurricane, is that the storm surge level is rising, and the trunks of these trees are almost completely underwater. At least the bottom halves of these trees are almost underwater. I've been monitoring the water, and you can see this over the balcony too, Jesse, where you are, of how high it's rising. Yep. Because, you know, we're very elevated here, and we're maybe 50 to 100 feet where the driveway starts, and then you and I are 4 and 5 stories up. But I can see that water rise, and you look at the garage just across from us. and that garage, the first floor is almost completely underwater, and it hasn't stopped rising. I want to tell you something else I just learned, Jesse. Our weather unit is telling me now that they can't tell us how fast the wind is blowing at this point because the sensors likely here are broken. The last one they clocked were somewhere around 102 miles per hour. And you and I know over the last few minutes, it's been getting stronger and stronger since then. It's one of the reasons why we're reporting from inside this concrete structure, this garage, because it's safer. I also want to tell our viewers that if they see a flash of green or orange, it's not lightning. It's likely a transformer exploding somewhere in the distance. And Jesse, I've been seeing those quite frequently over the last 10, 15 minutes.
Yeah, we started seeing them quite a while ago too, Tom. I mean, that's been one of the stories unfolding the last couple hours, and I think you hit it on the head. The debris is the big unknown here. I've been asking officials about the impact of it on everything from potentially making a death toll worse to exacerbating the storm surge. And the other thing that they didn't seem to think was a big point of concern, but I'm going to be curious about tomorrow, Tom, is we know how quickly the flooding can recede when you get the debris cleared out from the storm drains, right? The lingering flooding hours after landfall. I want to know how much worse that flooding will be or how much quicker it has unfolded because of that debris. And it might be hard to gauge just because there's no one that's going to be tracking that in real time. Tom, I want to, if you bear with me for a moment, we're going to show our viewers, we've been able to get mobile enough to give people an idea of how much water is around us. So, Tom, this is the side we've been showing people, and you have too, again and again. And it's an incline, so it's hard to know how quickly the water is rising because it keeps getting steeper, right? So it might be more water coming in than we can tell just because of that incline. This is one side, and now come with me. And Tom, you're talking about the fortification. We've got these sturdy walls. This garage is almost entirely insulated, but we do have those pocket windows we can go to step outside and give people an idea of what we're seeing. And on this end, we have a view of the other side street. I know you were down here earlier before it got too risky to be down there. And then we also can see the main street, Tom, and have our photographer, David, come in here and show you the view from over here. We are surrounded by water by at least three sides here. This is the other side street, perpendicular to where we were, and then off in the distance out there is the main road in downtown Sarasota, and I can see the water rippling in the reflections from the lights that are still working out there. So clearly we have water on at least three sides here, Tom, and it's going up the side of that stop sign and that street sign. It's almost entirely submerged what looks to be a railing by a sidewalk over there. It's hard to know how much, but it has to easily be feet of water, Tom. Oh, that's a big gust.
Yeah, so
that's a big gust.
Yeah, no, yeah. It's getting worse and worse, and we have another couple of hours. The other thing we have to tell our viewers, because of this storm surge, we're actually camping out here. We're going to overnight inside this garage because it's just too dangerous even to walk over to the hotel in conditions like this. The storm is now a Category 2 hurricane. It's headed towards central Florida. That's where Priscilla Thompson is for us tonight. Priscilla, as we look over my shoulder here, I'm hearing this loud wind. I just got to kind of look over and make sure everything's okay. What are you seeing in Orlando at this hour?
Yeah, Tom. So about 20 minutes ago, we lost power here. So now the location where we are, the hotel, is running on generator power. So they're able to power some things. But already we're without power here. And the worst of this storm has not yet even arrived. Over the past several hours, the rain has been coming down. The wind has been picking up. It appears to be slowing for a moment here. But we did hear that loud crack of thunder, and then immediately all of the lights in the room that we were in went out. All of our lights out here went out. And so we are running fully on batteries. And now there are more than 1 million people across the state without power as this storm is continuing to churn on. But the real threat here is going to be the flooding. Earlier today, when we were out on the roads, when this first started, we were already seeing some roads starting to flood, the water beginning to pool, and they are expecting up to 14 inches by the time this is all over. And so they are bracing for that flooding. The county here has passed out more than 200,000 sandbags. They've also been working to lower the water levels in the bodies of water here, and they've got pumps set up all throughout this area so that as they can get this water out quickly when that flooding really starts to pick up. But catastrophic flash flooding, definitely a concern here. And again, the power already out in some areas here, and the worst of the storm is still projected to be at least an hour or two off from where we are. Tom?
And Priscilla, talk to us about the tourists there, right? Because Orlando obviously runs on tourism. You have Disney, you have Universal, the amazing theme parks of Orlando. Were tourists staying put or were they evacuating?
Well, those theme parks, those major theme parks closed, which is something that we do not often see, that Universal and Disney all closed. We have seen boarding up taking place in those areas. And so tourists were not going to be able to visit those sites. I will tell you, the hotel that we're at has a lot of people here, some residents, perhaps some tourists, but there are something like 1,500 people who are in shelters and in hotels right now, bracing for what is to come. And businesses have been closed throughout this area. We did go to one gas station earlier that said that they plan to remain open, but even the woman, the cashier inside, said that she was worried about staying there, but that she had to stay there to work. And so a lot of folks heeding the warnings, making sure that they're closing, but you do have some folks who are remaining open, and that could be a real problem because, as we have heard from first responders and emergency officials, once this gets bad here, they are not going to be able to get out to help people, especially as we're talking about flooding, which we know how deadly and concerning that can be, in addition to the tornadoes that we saw ripping across central and southern Florida earlier today. And so now this new wave of a threat is preparing to come in here. Tom?
All right, Priscilla Thompson, you stay safe tonight. We appreciate your reporting. We're looking live right now at what is, I guess, a tennis pavilion. It's right next to these tennis courts that are on top of this parking garage. And the vinyl siding of that structure is getting ripped off. And you can see it's kind of flapping back and forth. But we're watching that because we just don't want to see that go airborne, because that can be pretty dangerous. While we kind of monitor what's happening here in Sarasota as the hurricane force winds are just crushing this city right now, I want to get over to Sam Brock, who's live for us in Fort Myers. Sam, talk to us about what you're seeing where you are.
Well, it's an interesting way that you phrased that, Tom. What I'm seeing right now is not a whole lot because it is dark. About 30 to 45 minutes ago, we were doing a live report with Gotti, and the lights just started flickering, and then the entire block just went out, and I'm staring out right now into the abyss. There is a building down the street that is likely on a generator that's still light, so you can probably see that. But beneath it, just oceans forming in the streets. You know, there's obviously a river right here in Fort Myers that we were talking about. The potential for it to breach the streets over the course of the last couple of hours, absolute change in the sense that there's 2 to 3 feet minimum. I would say more, just rushing through downtown Fort Myers right now. And I'm not talking about Fort Myers Beach, which of course had that horrific experience with Hurricane Ian a couple of years ago. That's a barrier island, 20 minutes, 30 minutes from where we are, and then crossed by bridge. This is downtown Fort Myers, and I'm looking around and I'm seeing tree branches floating in the street. Haven't seen dumpsters yet, so it's not quite strong enough to perform that. But this is a snapshot emblematic of what, no doubt, corner after corner looks like throughout this town. And I say this because I just checked the U.S. power outage numbers. Priscilla was talking about this a second ago. In the state of Florida, 1.5 million customers, no power right now. 1.5 million customers means you figure 2 or 3 or 4 people at home. You're talking about 4 or 5 million people in Florida without any power right now. That includes right here. There's not the sort of metal siding that was pulling off. I've certainly seen that before. Have not seen that where we are. So please take care where you are right now, Tom. But just we're sort of getting that information. Also, just to update you on some of the key talking points right now, there's more than 100,000 people across the state that are currently in shelters. Excuse me if this has been reported previously. Our colleague Marissa Parra was updating me on that. That was as of about an hour or so ago. The previous update had been 30,000, right? So there have been these widespread calls for evacuation all over Florida, from where we are at Fort Myers, south to Naples, which is in a major flood stage, and that was as of 2 hours ago, north to Sarasota, where you are, and beyond Tampa. It's the whole region right now that has folks that are displaced, that doesn't have any power. There were confirmed fatalities in Fort Pierce, Florida, St. Lucie County. We got an update, John Filippelli did, from our Miami bureau, from officials there that said that there's been multiple fatalities from a tornado. And now think about this. 19 confirmed tornadoes, or the way the governor phrased it was tornadoes that have touched down, because we know they have to be surveyed, as of a couple of hours ago. So they're all over, right? That's just one little portion. In all likelihood, you're talking about dozens of tornadoes. This remains a threat. It's dark in a nocturnal sense. You know, it's much harder to see them wrapped up at night. And so that's a cause for concern as well. And sort of to put a bow on all of this, what you were saying earlier, we have been seeing big green flashes in the sky. Haven't seen it for a little while now, but it certainly seems likely that it is transformers blowing and affecting the electrical infrastructure here. And yeah, I'm just looking into darkness. I can barely see the camera in front of me, but at least the winds have come down a little bit in the last 20 or 30 minutes.
All right, Sam Brock, you and your team stay safe as well. We thank you for your reporting and staying up late for us tonight here on NBC News Now. We are up and we are broadcasting live from Sarasota because Hurricane Milton has made landfall and it is just absolutely crushing the city of Sarasota. Just behind me, we've been watching this tennis pavilion that is getting the siding ripped off of it. We're going to put a light on it so you can see it a little bit better. We're trying to keep eyes on it because when the siding gets ripped off, it becomes projectiles. And part of the roof has already shredded off, and now sides of the tennis pavilion are getting launched into the air as well. We're talking about hurricane force winds north of 100 miles per hour. That's what we're going through right now as you hear and see some of that vinyl being tossed around. It's dangerous down there. It's dangerous all over Sarasota. What you may not be able to see or tell that you're looking at right now, that is water on the ground there. The storm surge is rising. These trees, the bottom halves of them are completely underwater. And that water level has been rising. We've been watching it. It is held steady for the last 20 minutes. So I'm hoping that maybe that's the extent of the storm surge. I'm praying that's the extent of it, because if it goes up any higher, it could be incredibly dangerous. Already parts of Sarasota look like islands because they're surrounded by all sides of water. The power is out here. As you heard, more than 1 million customers across the state of Florida without power. We have teams spread out across the state tonight. 1.6 million, I'm being told now, people without power, customers. That's just a house, that's an apartment. So you think about family members, as Sam pointed out, and that number could be 3-4 million people without power right now. As I mentioned, our teams are spread out across Florida tonight. We're live for you in Sarasota. Dana Griffin and her team are stationed in Naples. Dana, we were watching that Naples pier for the past couple of days. We know it got destroyed during Hurricane Ian. I think I can hear what you're seeing there and what you're feeling. Talk to us about Naples right now.
Yeah, Tom, if you're hearing some clacking in the background, this is how strong the winds are. We are in a parking garage. We are safe, but there are some metal signs that are swinging just behind us. We can't show them to you right now, but that is the noise that you're probably hearing. And you can see the trees kind of whipping. They're leaning a little bit to the left here. We're not seeing much rain. We're kind of getting rain off and on. It's stopped at the moment, but we've lost power just behind us. This street light was on back here, so we've got a little bit more darkness than we saw earlier. Our hotel lost power for about 30 minutes earlier tonight, but they were able to get back up and running. Naples right now, although we are south of the storm, we are still feeling major impacts. The city of Naples tweeting out videos showing storm surge coming through downtown. This was around 5:30 this afternoon. We know it surpassed 4 feet. I heard numbers possibly as high as 6 feet, but the police department says that storm surge is expected to reach peak numbers between 3 a.m. and 6 a.m. So we've still got several hours to go, and the impacts will be felt as we go through the night. We know that power outages have impacted some 30,000 people here in Naples alone. Even here in this garage, the door just opened and then slammed shut. So that's just how powerful the winds are at this moment. That is the biggest thing that we are seeing right now. Officials have told people to stay off the roads, no driving. So luckily, we have not seen any cars. We know 911 services and emergency crews are still responding to emergency calls, unlike other counties where they have suspended them as the storm passes through. Here, they are still answering calls. Luckily, no injuries in Collier County. But likely we may learn more as day breaks, because again, the dangerous part about this storm, besides it, coming ashore and hitting and slamming against Florida, is that this is happening under the cover of darkness. So there's going to be a lot of damage, a lot of possible injuries that we don't know about until morning. So it's important for people to stay put, stay hunkered down. It is not safe to be out on the roads right now. And earlier today, we were at the beach just before Milton made landfall earlier today, and we saw several surfers out on the water, many telling me that this is their dream, to be out on the water to catch those waves before the storm hits. Officials were telling people they needed to leave, but that's also part of this story. You have people that are taking the storm very seriously, and they were too, to a certain extent, because they said that they were in higher elevations, that they were going to go farther inland to get away from the storm once it got closer. But in that meantime, they were out there enjoying the surf. And right now, this is what we're seeing here in Naples, just a lot of wind. And this is likely going to continue through the night. Tom?
Yeah, Dana Griffin, we appreciate your reporting. Please stay safe as well. A lot going on in Naples as well. A lot going on all over the Gulf Coast. Where we are in Sarasota, the wind has not stopped. It has been a constant feeling of hurricane force winds north of 100 miles per hour. At last check, they were 102 miles per hour, and then the sensors, I'm being told, broke. So it's unclear how strong the winds are at this point, but they've been relentless. They've been shredding palm trees. They've been shredding trees. They've been shredding structures as well, vinyl being ripped off. We have multiple cameras here in Sarasota now. My producer, Ignacio Torres, has a live view camera showing a different angle from where we are in this protected concrete structure. And we're essentially trying to show you the different angles of what's happening around this area of Sarasota. The power is out. More than 1.6 million across the state don't have power right now. The hurricane force winds don't want to stop. They keep going. And it's just getting started. We still have another hour to 2 hours of being hit with these relentless winds. But we're staying put. We're in a protected space. We hope people evacuated, because you would not be able to survive this on a barrier island. It would be incredibly difficult as we're watching the storm surge continue to come in. The good news is I've been monitoring it for the last 20, 30 minutes. It looks like it's kind of staying where it is, but it's already overtaken one story of a parking garage below us. So that gives you an idea of how much water's coming in from the bay. We were out in the storm covering it when it was the eye, and the eye is obviously the calm part of the storm. And we knew the backside was coming. The backside is when things get dangerous. Right now, this is the backside of the storm here. But the weather turned on us so quickly. We were reporting live, and we had this moment happen when a transformer exploded over our head. Here's that clip now. Welcome back to our live coverage of Hurricane Milton. The situation here in Sarasota is starting to turn dire. At first, we had, okay, we're gonna go, we gotta go.
Wow, that is
So there was essentially a transformer exploding over our heads. It was, we felt it was way too dangerous to be out there. We wanted to come way in. But I got to tell you, the weather turned on us within minutes. We were out there. It was calm. We were talking about how it was almost like a calm Sarasota summer night. And then within minutes, that's why the eye is so deceiving. As soon as the eye passed us, it was the back of the eye wall. Things got really intense and really dangerous really quickly. But again, now we're in this concrete structure. We're monitoring everything behind us here. Angie Lastman is back at 30 Rock. She's monitoring the hurricane and where it's headed. Angie, what can you update us on?
Well, we've got a category 2. I heard you mention that earlier, Tom. We are, of course, seeing this system interact with land, so no surprise that we're going to get some weakening. It's still looking pretty good, though, when it comes to the winds, 110 miles per hour. It's moving quite quick, still northeast at 16 miles per hour, but we have an ongoing flood emergency happening across parts of the Tampa area, so we're specifically going to hone in on that here to start. Here's what's going on. We've got this entire area, Ruskin, Tampa, Clearwater, St. Petersburg. We have recorded 16 inches, more than 16 inches of rain at St. Petersburg Airport here throughout the day today. That just tells you what's happening. We've had multiple inches happening in 1 hour. We had a report of over 5 inches in 1 hour in St. Petersburg. This is likely going to shape up to be a 1 in a 1,000-year rain event when it comes to folks in St. Petersburg and the surrounding area. So that flash flood emergency is going to last until 2:30 for this region. And you can see why. The really, really heavy rains, the purples, the reds are all kind of centered and sitting over that area. Yes, the system's moving 15, 16 miles per hour over the past couple of hours, but not fast enough to kind of get folks that have already been sitting in this part of the eye wall in those rain bands for a prolonged period. So we're likely talking multiple, maybe a foot and a half of rain here by the time this is all said and done in some of these spots. Now, Sarasota, you're on the backside of that, of course, Tom, where the winds are onshore. You're getting those onshore winds, so the storm storm surge has been the big story with this system in a lot of spots. And yes, Tampa Bay dodged it, but Sarasota and points south, we are seeing places like Port Charlotte, Punta Gorda, all dealing with impressive storm surge. We're talking 5, 6, maybe 8 feet of storm surge right now. The problem is we don't have a whole lot of sensors in that region, so we're not going to be able to exactly tell what's happening in some of those spots between, Bradenton and Sarasota and points south to Fort Myers. But with the strength of this system, it's not going to be surprising if we see those numbers in that Hurricane Center forecast verify as we get into tomorrow. So that's what we're watching when it comes to that. But even still, 4.6 feet in Fort Myers, we're likely seeing, again, in this area, much, much higher amounts. That is what we are so concerned about for folks there. This 9 to 13 feet, still very possible. And we're going towards high tide time. That happens around 6 o'clock in the morning. So that means that the water, just astronomically, is still coming in. And so is that big rush of water from this massive hurricane that continues to work across the state. Now, the hurricane gusts that we've seen have been impressive. Sarasota, where Tom is, 102 miles per hour. That was last hour, and we're not going to get any more updates when it comes to the gauge there, because unfortunately the sensor has broken. So unfortunately, we're going to be looking at likely those strong wind gusts sitting in that same kind of area here as we go through at least the next couple of hours where Tom is, but we're not going to get those updates. As we go through the next 12 hours or so, though, that wind field is going to work across the state. And that means that the potential for damaging wind gusts and, of course, more power outages, you've heard our correspondents reporting on those, that's going to continue. And it'll be probably widespread from Tampa all the way to the Space Coast. This is the area that we're going to watch here as we get into tomorrow, specifically Daytona Beach to Orlando, Melbourne. That's where we'll be watching for that flash flood risk to transition to as the storm works to the east. And it's already really saturated grounds, honestly. We've got a report from Tampa Airport, over 8 inches of rain there. This has been, just quite impressive how that band just kind of sat over that area and dumped multiple inches of rain per hour. And we've got more hours to come for rain for that spot, unfortunately. So that's why we're so concerned. That's why you see that wording with the flash flood emergency. And this is a widespread area. And by the way, as the system moves to the north, that same rain band is going to also work to the north. And that concern will be centered over places like Orlando. We know the kind of flood risk that the state of Florida has as a whole. It is built on porous limestone. That water doesn't have a whole lot of places to go. So we know the flood risk that happens here as we get really, saturated grounds and heavy rain events unfolding all at the same time. So unfortunately, this is what we're going to be watching here well into the daylight hours. Tom, this is going to be ongoing for the morning hours. The only good news in this is system is going to cruise across the state of Florida pretty quick. And that means probably by noontime tomorrow, it's going to be emerging out over the Atlantic waters. And then, of course, then it will be checking out, of course, the damage that has left behind. But we won't be talking about Milton much longer into the second half of our day tomorrow.
Angie, before you go, I do want to ask you, I've been watching the storm surge here, and it looks like it was rising pretty quickly. It looks like it may have stabilized. I obviously can't go down there and measure. I'm just sort of eyeballing it from different signs and where I'm seeing the water level. When is high tide? I'm sorry if you went over this. It's just been so loud with the wind. Yeah. When is high tide here, and how will that affect the storm surge that we're seeing right now?
So one thing, Tom, the strongest winds that you were going through, that biggest push of water, that was, of course, happening as the center of the system was right there. So that's probably why you saw it happening at a very rapid rate. That's why we often say with storm surge that it can happen in an instant, especially the closer you are to the center of that system. Now what you're seeing is winds, of course, still very aggressive, very destructive, but not quite as aggressive as they had been when you were closer to the center of that system. But you're going to see still an elevation in these tides as we get into the overnight hours. High tide around 5, 6 o'clock in the morning. So we'll probably see peaking closer to then, maybe 2 o'clock, 3 o'clock. But that water level is going to continue to rise. And I was looking at pictures coming out of Venice that we had inundation in homes, and those amounts are going to continue to rise here. Unfortunately, we don't have gauges there, so we're going to have to see what happens with first light to see exactly how that shapes up.
Yeah, the winds have absolutely been relentless, as you've been reporting. As the storm moves more towards the center of the state, and hopefully at some point to the East Coast and off into the Atlantic Ocean, because it's causing so much damage right now. Like we said, we have teams spread out all across Florida, covering the entire Gulf Coast, the center part of Florida, and then the East Coast as well. And we unfortunately have had some bad news throughout the night that people have died from the tornadoes that touched down in Fort Pierce and St. Lucie County. Those tornadoes are just so powerful. They take people by surprise. And usually if you have no time to get out of its way, you're not going to survive, because they are some of the strongest weather systems that exist on this planet. Couple that with this monster that we're dealing with right now, Hurricane Milton, that is just absolutely ripping Sarasota apart. I'm going to ask our photographer, George Poles, to come in here a little bit to kind of show what we're seeing here. These trees kind of tell part of the story because they're kind of being shredded in these hurricane force winds. What you can't see, it's hard to see, is all the water, the storm surge we've been talking about. If you see those waves coming in, that current, that's all storm surge. That should be a parking lot. That should be a driveway, and you can't even see it anymore. The storm surge has created islands around some of these big buildings, some of these condos, and these parking lots. Where we are right now is surrounded by water. We're going to stay here riding out the storm until it's safe to go outside. So we're talking about 4 or 5 a.m. We're not going to leave this structure. Thankfully, it's concrete, and we can deal with it over the next couple of hours. I want to go to a storm chaser who's here in Sarasota. His name is Matt. And Matt, talk to us about what you're seeing right now where you are and what part of Sarasota you're in.
Yeah, definitely. I'm downtown next to the Embassy Suites, and I've got to say, you know, the backside has been so much more forceful than the front side. I think that's catching a lot of folks off guard. I've seen winds consistently between 100, 110 miles per hour. I've eventually kind of backed up throughout the street because the surge has been creeping higher and higher and higher. I watched it rise about 2.5, 3 feet in only 10 minutes time. So it came in rather fast. Power flashes, transformers blowing left and right. It's been absolutely crazy. At one point, part of a palm tree flew past me, a roof flew past me. From one of the rooftops of the hotels, a bench crashed down, literally came crashing down to the ground, exploding into a series of metallic shards. It was insane. Part of a traffic light ripped off right next to me. And I think part of the reason why we're seeing these extreme winds isn't just the hurricane, it's how the hurricane is interacting with non-hurricane weather systems. It's undergoing something called extratropical transition, a baroclinic process. Sounds like a mouthful. Basically, it's beginning to feel like a non-tropical storm. And so some dry air is wrapping in the backside. Now, the moisture from the storm is falling into that dry air, evaporating. That makes the air a little bit drier, and drier air is heavier, so it sinks, and it kind of pulls momentum from aloft all the way to the ground. So you're getting these crazy strong winds that otherwise would be in the upper atmosphere down to the ground. We call that a sting jet. It's been wild. I also want to briefly talk about how heavy the rainfall has been. It's been incredible. You mentioned earlier on parts of the Tampa area seeing unbelievable rainfall on the order of 9.04 inches in St. Petersburg in 3 hours' time, 5.09 falling in just 1 hour. That's a 1,000-year rain event, a once-in-a-thousand-year rain event on average. You know, anything over 8.5 inches in 3 hours is considered once in 1,000 years on average. So this thing is like a once-in-2,000-year flooding event for the greater Tampa area. And part of the reason, once again, that non-tropical process. Dry air filtering in the south side kicked up all the moisture, helped focus it, and you get these crazy intense rainfall rates near and north of I-4. So the I-4 corridor has a top-tier risk of flash flooding and excessive rainfall. A lot of folks lining up with 15 inches, give or take. So this storm has been more than a lot of folks bargained for, and the back half has a lot more punch than the first half.
All right. We thank you for your help, and we thank you for covering the storm with us here at NBC News. Please be safe where you are. I know where your hotel is. I spotted it. I hope you're okay, and I hope you're out of harm's way, because right now, as you mentioned, the backside of this hurricane has gotten particularly crazy. We're joined now by an official from Daytona Beach. He works with the fire department there, the chief of the fire department, and we thank you for joining our live coverage tonight, Chief Drew Driscoll. Chief, we were getting reports of a tornado possibly touching down in Daytona. Do you have any information about that tonight?
We have not experienced that tornado touchdown, though we anticipate many tornadoes coming in this area, as we've experienced throughout the state of Florida.
Are your units able to respond to calls right now, or is it too dangerous at this hour?
Well, right now, the bridges to the barrier island have been shut down, which will delay our response. But currently, we're still experiencing that tropical force wind speed and power outages. So we are able to respond, but there will be a time we'll no longer be able to respond to assist people.
What type of emergency calls have you been getting so far tonight? Is it your sort of, I know it's not a typical night, but is it what you expected?
No, yeah, it's what we expect. The power line down, the tree down, the fire alarms, and in addition to the medical calls. But we've also experienced a couple smaller structure fires, especially in our neighboring jurisdictions where we've been able to assist them.
And Chief, what else do you want your people to know tonight? If they're watching our coverage tonight, what do you want the people of Daytona Beach to be aware of as Hurricane Milton is just tearing through Florida?
Oh, as we continue watching your coverage, we're expecting localized freshwater flooding in addition to tidal surge flooding along the intercoastal waterway beginning early in the morning. And the winds they're experiencing locally right now, this is just the beginning. We're going to see increasing winds throughout the evening and into the morning. So we encourage everyone to heed the warning and the curfew order out and stay hunkered down in place and allow your public safety officials and public work people to go out there and mitigate the damage as we all begin to recover, hopefully in the coming days and weeks.
Chief Drew Driscoll, we appreciate you tonight and good luck getting through the night. I know it's going to be a long night for you and your brave men and women. Jesse Kirsch is going to rejoin our coverage right now. He's just below us here in Sarasota in that parking garage complex that we're stationed at. Jesse, you know, we're getting no break from this. One thing I noticed, it appeared that the storm surge wasn't rising. But Angie, our meteorologist, Angie Lassman, telling us that high tide's at 5 a.m. and that water could rise once more.
So, Tom, I can tell you for the moment it appears to be receding. We'll go down below again here. The light that is out, the one that is out, to the left of it, there's one that's on going up the ramp. And there's a, like a no parking sign on the siding. I've been watching that. And the water level used to be beyond it up the ramp. And it has since receded to the other side of it. And I hear that scraping again, Tom, which I know gets both of us turning our heads around because that means that debris is on the move. So we're going to keep our eyes out. I'm noticing something, Tom. It occurred to us a short time ago, and I don't know if you're feeling this up there. I can taste it. I can feel it. You feel like you're at the beach right now. This is salt water. This is not flooding from rain. This is storm surge, which means we're dealing with water from out there in the bay, in the ocean that has made it onto land. And I'm realizing that it feels like when you are at a coastal restaurant, when you're on the beach, that's what it feels like. I can feel the salt water in the air, and it feels like it's sitting in. I'm wondering if you're feeling that too.
Yeah, Jesse, when we had that little dicey situation with the transformer exploding over our head, I realized as we were walking back, I was like, oh, that's no longer rainwater. That's the seawater. And yeah, we had seen the storm surge come in little by little. I agree with you. I think it might be receding for now. But again, once the high tide hits, it could be a much different story. It's likely going to be a different story. And we're just going to have to wait and see what exactly happens with that. Something that has impressed me, though, with this storm is the backside has been incredibly powerful. It looks like the winds may be slowing, but just when you sort of put your guard down for a second, a massive hurricane force wind comes through here. And we already know it's north of 100 miles per hour, Jesse.
Yeah, and Tom, I think this wind cannot make up its mind. We've got this water that's been shooting off the side of the garage. And by the way, for people watching at home, Tom's basically directly above where I'm standing right now. And I can actually see the lights, and I can see your photographer's camera. If he tilts down a little bit more, he can see me. If George tilts down a little bit more, he can see me waving up to him. We'll see if he comes down. I'll keep talking while, yep, there he is. So there we are right below you, Tom. And there you are. Hey, man. So this water that's shooting off the side here, for a moment, it looked like it was suspended in midair because you had the water shooting out and then the wind changed direction and it looked like it was frozen in midair for a time and then it kept shooting out. So, yeah, I mean, this wind cannot decide which way it wants to move. And to your point, just when you think it's calming down, it whips back up again. And we are very much not through this yet. And you said you're spending the night. We're planning to spend the night here too. And, you know, that leads to all that preparation we've done. And so many people have done in these communities, bottled water, non-perishable food, stocking up on gasoline. And I think, Tom, I don't know if you noticed this when you got into town, when we were talking about this earlier, it really felt like people were getting ready faster with this storm.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. I mean, I think Hurricane Helene really woke people up, unfortunately, in a bad way. I mean, you hate for hurricanes to hit Florida. I'm a Floridian. I was born in Miami. And, you know, people were hurting from Helene. I spoke to a lot of friends in Tampa, worried about insurance claims, worried about their houses. The first floor of their houses were flooded. And then now you have this storm as well, and they don't know what to do because of rising insurance rates, losing another week of work, taking your family out of the Tampa area, and then at some point coming back. But the power is going to be out for a while. The power's out right now throughout Sarasota. We're talking about north of 1.6 million people without power in the entire state, which is millions of people when you think about, families and people who have roommates, et cetera, et cetera. As we're watching Sarasota, Jesse, I think one of the things that we're going to have to figure out as the sun comes up, right, is what happened to those barrier islands, because that was the big fear. Places like Longboat Key, we know that landfall was in Cedar Key, and anything south of that, the storm surge was pretty intense. Those barrier islands, I mean, they're beautiful, they're wonderful to relax in, but in a hurricane or in a storm surge situation, they're incredibly dangerous because there is nowhere to run.
Yeah, and Tom, we've been out on the barrier islands, and while we're talking here, I don't know if the control room's able to find the footage from yesterday. We were out on the barrier islands at a resort, and we showed the impact. I think it was in the 12:30 p.m.-ish on News Now. If anyone's able to find this control room, we were able to go into a resort room. The door's supposed to swing out. It was busted in on top of a pile of sand. The furniture was tossed around. The fridge was tossed and tilted on its side. And that was the impact of the force of that storm surge. I went to a gentleman's home. The water line on his house was around my waist height. And when you looked at all the piles of debris in all of the neighborhoods out there and the businesses impacted as well, that was from a storm that was bringing a projected half as much storm surge as what we were thinking we were going to see with Milton. One of the storylines that I'll also be thinking about in the days ahead, Tom, is, we're heading into fall, and you can hear that scraping debris. It's right at the edge here, so we'll be keeping an eye on it. It's a little cooler now in the fall as we get into fall, which hopefully will alleviate some of the stress of being in the heat without air conditioning. But one of the things that people may not realize when they watch our coverage of this and aren't familiar firsthand with the impacts of a hurricane, the threats that officials are thinking about don't go away after a hurricane. They just change, because then it becomes about people properly using generators to have lights, to have produce kept in a fridge, to run air conditioning, all of the things that we take for granted on a good day that run through generators for a lot of people after storms. If you don't handle that generator properly, that can be deadly too, Tom.
All right, Jesse Kurz for us. Jesse, we appreciate that. We want to go back to Daytona Beach right now, where we were following reports of serious weather happening there. We just spoke to the chief. One of our new meteorologists, I should say one of our new climate reporters, Chase Kane, is covering it from there. Chase, what can you tell us about what you're seeing and what you're experiencing?
Tom, as the storm has moved inland and has moved closer to Daytona Beach, I mean, you can hear the wind howling behind me. You can see the trees here. We have sustained tropical storm force winds, but some of the gusts have been in the neighborhood of 70 miles an hour, so really just a few miles an hour away. You see on the horizon, there's yet another of the transformers exploding. We've been seeing the same thing here on the Atlantic coast, transformers popping on the horizon. There is a curfew in place. There's also a mandatory evacuation order in place for this part of Daytona Beach, and you can see why, because we are just now starting to get some of the strongest part of the storm, and we expect that the worst of it, Tom, is going to be over the next 2 or 3 hours.
Chase, we were trying to follow reports that there were possibly a tornado touchdown in Daytona. Was there anything to that reports, or were those unsubstantiated?
So far, what I was seeing, Tom, is we were seeing the traditional, the stereotypical rotation on radar, and then the winds picked up really quickly here. We can actually walk over to the road a little bit and show you some of what we were seeing, because the winds have been so intense, pretty consistent, and then all of a sudden we saw those swirling winds. So it matched what I was seeing on the live radar, that we saw that rotation. Haven't been able to yet determine if it was a confirmed tornado, but here on the street, there's been a lot of, I'm about to lose my hat. There's been a lot of debris flying by, so we're going to stay here in the wind shadow to stay safe. But as that was happening, you could see things being picked up and tossed down the street here behind me, Tom.
Chase Kane, we appreciate you. Thank you. Please stay safe tonight. We want to speak to the sheriff of St. Lucie tonight, St. Lucie County. Sheriff, are you with us?
I'm here. How are you?
Good. We're in Sarasota, so it's a little hard for me to hear you at times, but I know you can hear me, so that's a good sign. Sheriff, first of all, I'm sorry. We've heard reports that some people have died because of the tornado that touched down in St. Lucie. Do you have any more information about what's happened there?
Yeah, so currently, right now, we're in 100% rescue mode. Our deputies are out there going through this neighborhood that was just devastated by these multiple tornadoes that touched down in such a short period of time. Governor DeSantis has already reached out. He sent the National Guard, which is here on scene, as well as our partner from Jimmy Petronas. There's a search and rescue team out there. We've got about 200 people searching through this rubbish. We can confirm that there's been multiple fatalities. But again, we haven't even seen the effects of Hurricane Milton yet. Right now, we're focused on, no matter how the storm comes, we're going to rescue as many people as we can.
I'm sorry that your brave men and women are dealing with that at this hour, especially when there's a hurricane that is just ripping across Florida. To give our viewers an understanding of where you are, you're just north of West Palm Beach, Florida. St. Lucie is a special place. It's a wonderful community. I've been there several times. I do want to ask you, how are your teams able to sort of conduct these rescue operations? Are the conditions okay there, or are they battling the elements as well?
Listen, the men and women of the St. Lucie County Sheriff's Office, the fire district, the municipalities here, as well as the EOC members that are out there in excavators going through this, is going to do everything we possibly can to save as many lives as we can, whether this storm comes or not. So there's people out there that need help. Our deputies are out there. The National Guard is already here. They were here within an hour. Specialized search and rescue teams are here. We're not stopping until we rescue everybody that needs rescuing.
It's the right attitude to have, Sheriff. I do want to ask you, did the tornadoes take your community by surprise? Was there any warning whatsoever, or did they just sort of appear, pop up, and just cause complete devastation?
Well, we know that the hurricanes, the feeder brands kick out tornadoes. We don't normally see tornadoes here on the Treasure Coast. Unfortunately, I don't know if you saw the reports, this whole thing started off by actually Sheriff's Office, a 10,000 square foot red iron structure that was housing all of our high water rescue vehicles and our branded vehicles was hit by a tornado in 50 yards away from where we were, and it completely wiped it out. We were outside pulling out as much high water rescue vehicles as you can out of that. Complete devastation. I'm talking about tens of millions of dollars worth of damage. As we're there, all of a sudden in a 20-minute period, we've got reports of 17 confirmed tornadoes that just destroyed our community. Now, there's been over 100 residences that are completely destroyed, and we don't even have the hurricane here yet with the sustained winds. Those other neighborhoods, we've checked, they're good. All life was taken care of. So right now we're focusing in a 55 and older community that's mainly consisted of modular homes that, I mean, you wouldn't even recognize it. I'm not sure how strong tornadoes are rated, but I can tell you this, there was cars lifted and flipped upside down, moved hundreds of yards. I can tell you that there was nothing left to some of these places but foundations, and these whole trailers were moved, 10, 15 rolls. I mean, you can't even recognize it. This path of destruction is like nothing.
Yeah, in a lot of cases, tornadoes are more powerful than hurricanes. They cause so much destruction in that line of the tornado. It's hard to believe. Is your 911 system still up and running? Is that still functioning?
No, everything's functioning. This is strictly down. I mean, you can literally see the path of where this went and where these multiple tornadoes went. It just left complete devastation. Our community's out here. We're going to rescue whoever needs rescue. We're not going to stop. Again, we have the greatest governor. We're in Florida. We're resilient. We're going to continue to search them. Whether Milton comes or not, our deputies and our staff is going to be out there rescuing everyone who needs rescuing through the storm.
Sheriff, we thank you for your time. I know it has been a wild, sad, and dangerous night for you. I appreciate you updating our viewers on what's happening in St. Lucie County. We're going to be thinking about your community. We're going to follow what's happening there. We're going to keep you in our prayers tonight.
Thank you, guys, and just God bless the rest of Florida.
Yeah. We are continuing our coverage here in Sarasota of Hurricane Milton. Just behind me, we have been dealing with hours of hurricane force winds, a storm surge that seems to be stabilizing, which is a bit of good news. The hurricane force winds, though, won't stop. It has been continuous over the last 2 hours. The eye passed over us. It was calm. It was quiet. And then suddenly it was chaos. And it's been that way for the last few hours. We still have about an hour to 2 hours to go as we continue to cover Hurricane Milton striking Sarasota and the Gulf region, cutting across Florida right now as a Category 2 hurricane. We're going to stay live on the air as we broadcast here on NBC News Now. Stay for the most comprehensive coverage. We have reporters fanned out across the state. Live reports coming up right after this short break. Stay with us.
All across California, families are being pushed out by ridiculous housing costs. Prop 5 changes the math. 5 gives local voters power to approve new housing. 5 strengthens first-time homebuyer assistance, meaning more firefighters, teachers, and nurses can stay in their communities. And 5
You're gonna have to guide me though.
I'll get you there. Trust me. I mean, that's gonna be a shot. You know what I mean?
Yep. All right.
So you want to go?
You're navigating.
Well, we need to go back that way if we want to go home. So let's get back to the interstate. So go ahead and flip around again. So we're going to do the intersection of 41 and 681, get up to 75. We're going to go 75 more. Wow.
All going down now. Just like my tires.
Are they going?
Not yet.
Just want to.
Yeah.
I think that was used as a shelter too.
No.
Yeah.
I'm gonna have some fun brother shots.
Yeah, it's going down here quite a bit.
I got a lot.
So we had 90 to 100 mile an hour wind gusts at CP.
Solid count 1.
Huh?
Solid count 1.
Yep. Theoretically, we'll get there in 2 hours. yeah, we don't have to go because it's like my house. You know that, right?
I know.
I've accepted its fate.
Your house is fine.
No, I'm saying like I'm accepting not having to go back till Friday.
Oh, I got you.
So I'm not in a rush to go. I just think that
You parked in the ditch.
yeah, I just think that that shot on your drone would be pretty incredible.
Do what?
Oh, I know what it was. I think they were housing first responders there.
Bye. How's it gonna look at night? What are we?
It's lit.
Is it? And I can light it up more.
See?
Yeah. I'm just not sure if I'll be able to get the drone up until much later. You want to go ahead and start putting that stuff together?
I will. Let's get you to the interstate.
Yeah,
How's that
yeah,
sound? Anything over there?
Nothing. This way, right?
To the right. North is Tampa.
I'm sure there's a back way to like your house.
No. No back way. Not right now, at least.
Are you questioning that tree?
At my house?
Yeah.
No.
I haven't seen a whole lot of big trees now.
At least there are trees, dude. I think it's gonna be all right. I think there'll be limbs down for sure.
Oh yeah.
My fence.
Don't care
probably
about
a
my
goner.
don't care about your fence.
Yeah, I do.
Oh, I
It's a pain,
mean,
but
well, I know. I mean, it's like if that's the worst thing to happen.
no, I trust me.
That's
I
okay.
totally understand. I mean, yeah, it is what it is, man. Like, I left the house when I did. I gave it a kiss goodbye. I said, maybe I'll see you. Maybe I won't. I loved you. You made it. You were a good home for nearly 10 years.
I wasn't too concerned until I realized I left my favorite T-shirt there. I think it'll be fine. Hey, Christian, I can't get him. I know you're asking me to reach out to him. But this is river, you can go to National Weather Service water and click on the gauges, and it should give you everything you need. Thank you, Stephen.
So you're gonna keep going, and then you'll join in here. It's gonna curve off to the left. So you just keep going straight here.